Today by my colleague Farah Ayad, and we are from the Immigration and Settlement Service of Catholic Social Services here in Edmonton. So what we do is we work with newcomers to Edmonton to help them to integrate into life here and to find their way and to become successful in Edmonton. I like the word settlement because I think it's a very Canadian word. I've traveled in places in the world where there are a lot of immigrants coming to those places, and nobody does it quite like what we do here in Edmonton, where we have services that are there to help the newcomers to integrate and to find their way. And so we're just going to go over a few of those services that we have to help newcomers to our city. So serving newcomers is one of the things that Catholic Social Services does. We have over 2,800 employees all across Northern Alberta. We are the largest single social service agency functioning in Western Canada. So aside from serving newcomers, we have many different programs that are designed to help those who have needs. People with disabilities, serving people with vulnerable individuals in children's and families and halfway houses and group homes and all different kinds of services that are related to our mandate, which is to serve those in need in a spirit of humility, compassion, and respect. So our little corner of the Catholic Social Services pie is the Immigration and Settlement Service. These are some of the offices that we have all around Central and Northern Alberta. And our office is located here in the great city of Edmonton, YEG. And we invite you to come say hello to us. That's it. We call it the Kolak Center. We're on 118th Avenue and 82nd Street. Alice Kolak was the founder of our service, who began the Immigration and Settlement Service in the year 1971 by herself. And she retired last year after a stunning career of 52 years. So we named our office after her. That's why it's called the Kolak Center. That's Alice Kolak. There's our address. There's our phone number. You're welcome to come by and say hello or give us a call. I guess we should have put the website address there too, probably, right? But it's, it's Catholic, cssalberta.ca, right? We're funded by 3 levels of government. The biggest funder that we have is IRCC, Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada. That is responsible for about 70% of our funding. We also receive funds from the Government of Alberta as well as the City of Edmonton. And we have our own internal fundraising campaign that you may be familiar with here in Edmonton that's called the Sign of Hope campaign. And what that does is that allows us to fund those services and programs that are not fundable, right? So we know that none of these guys are going to buy lunch when we're having, some kind of an event in which we need to provide lunch or something like that, or transportation. They don't do it. And so we always get that kind of money from the Sign of Hope campaign. Also, we have a one-of-a-kind, unique program here in our service, which is called the Intercultural Education Program. And we do all kinds of interesting workshops with newcomers, for example, parenting in 2 cultures, strengthening spousal relationships, and all of this really, really good stuff that, again, our funders don't necessarily see those kinds of things as a priority, but we sure do. And we have the ability to fund those kinds of unique programs through our Sign of Hope campaign. This is what's happening in Canada. I think, I don't need to explain it. Here we are today. This is the levels of immigration to Canada in the last 24 years. Okay? So here we are. Boom. In the time that I've been with the Immigration and Settlement Service, which is now a couple of decades, actually, I have seen the service triple in size. And that is because the number of newcomers who are coming to Canada continues to increase and continues to increase every year. That has to do with federal government policy, but it also has to do with our economy here in Edmonton and Alberta, where we really do need people. And that's actually true. So that whole myth about newcomers are coming to Alberta and taking our jobs, it's not actually true. They're doing jobs that most people who are born here don't want to do, for example. But in any case, regardless of what the circumstances behind this, we could also say that there are global conflicts at play that are bringing many people to Canada as refugees and as refugee claimants. This is an interesting graph which shows the shift in the demographic of people who are coming to Canada. So if you were not from Europe before the year 1961, you would not be admitted in Canada, right? So in 1961, the immigration policy was changed so that it was no longer based on racist policies about color and ethnic origin and such things. And so we see the shift so that now the vast majority of people who are coming to Canada come from places that are not Europe, or not the United States, or not Australia, right? People from Africa, from Asia, from Central Asia, from South Asia, from the Middle East. Huge amounts of people have come to Edmonton from the Middle East and from Africa. That's what I've noticed in my lifetime, for sure. And it's just fantastic. And I always like to inspire the newcomers that I work with about this, because it is so wonderful to be a part of a multicultural, diverse community like in any major city in Canada, right? And experience this intensity of diversity that we have. It is a gift and certainly is inspiring to the people that we serve. So in our service, we serve mostly permanent residents of Canada. The funders, our funders, make us, they fund us to serve permanent residents. So there are other kinds of newcomers, though, of course. There are people who come as what we call TFWs, temporary foreign workers. There's people who come as international students. There's people who come as refugee claimants, and those are otherwise known as asylum seekers, people who come through whatever port of entry into Canada and declare their status as a refugee, and then go through a process here, anywhere in Canada, where they have a hearing and they're given a work permit, and that usually takes 2 or 3 years. If it's successful, they are cleared, they're given permanent residency, and then eligible to do things like sponsor their family members to come over here. And then we have these poor Canadian citizens too. We have a lot of newcomers who have got their Canadian citizenship, but maybe they didn't learn how to speak English all that much because they were busy taking care of their kids and that kind of stuff, right? And so then they come to our programs after their kids grow up and go to school and become geniuses and move to Vancouver or Los Angeles or someplace. And then we got, grandmas from Vietnam who never learned English, and yet they are Canadian, and yet they need help, and they must not be isolated. The thing that we work against the most in our service is to prevent the isolation of the newcomers and look for ways that they can bridge into their communities and into life and into success, because everything in Canada is about networking, right? Who you know, how you get there. And it doesn't just happen if you stick within your own ethnocultural community. You need to broaden that base. You need to reach out. So this is a pie that shows in the year 2020 the different categories of newcomers coming to Canada. The largest category continues to be the economic class. 58% of immigrants coming to Canada come under what is called the point system. These are people from countries, a lot of them come from the Philippines, from China, from Japan, from Korea, from India, and they already speak English. They already have a professional accreditation, and so they are eligible, more eligible than others, to come to Canada as what we call economic immigrants or independent immigrants. What the government doesn't tell them is that they won't be able to work in their profession once they get here. So we bring all these IT people and all these engineers and all these technologists over to Canada only to tell them that they're not allowed to work here. And it makes me crazy. But there is a way, and Farah's going to talk about that as well, that we can guide them to find where is the education that they need, what is the professional accreditation that they're going to need, so that they can become active in the profession of their choice, or at least something similar that they're going to be engaged here. And tell me, everyone, do we need doctors in Canada? I'm thinking we do. I'm kind of really worried about it. And yet they're all out there driving cab and driving Uber and Uber Eats and working at Starbucks, doctors. Okay, so I encourage everyone to advocate wherever you can that the government quit misinforming these economic immigrants, and let's get these policies changed so that we can get these people active, right? Okay, so then we have the family class. So those are people who come from whatever category, and they sponsor their relatives and to come and be a permanent resident in Canada. What is a relative? A relative is a husband, a wife, or dependent child under the age of 18. If your child is 19 and still back home in Syria, you cannot. And this is the source of enormous trauma for many of the people that we serve who come as refugees, because they think, I shouldn't tell them I have another child back home because that will affect my chances to come and live in Canada. And so they don't declare them at the point of entry. And then they say, but I have a kid back home. And it's we didn't hear about that. And so that's not possible for you. And so family separation and family trauma is something that we deal with a lot. we have the refugee category. So that is the people that we serve. A lot of are people who are called government-assisted refugees. They enter Canada through something called the Resettlement Assistance Program, which is a UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugee, looks for countries in the world where people who are living in refugee camps outside of their country of origin can be resettled. There are 12 countries in the world that do this. Canada is one of them. So we have a partnership with the United Nations to do this. And most of the refugees who come through this program go to the major centers across Canada, the 6 largest cities across Canada. Okay, and then we have the humanitarian and compassionate piece of the pie, which is only 1% of the pie. And those are very, very extreme cases that often involve people like political prisoners and so forth that might be able to come. Usually people of status from other countries might be able to enter in that way. So this is what happens when you come to our office, is that you walk in and we do something called the needs assessment and referral system so that we can understand what are the needs that you have. What is your immigration status? Do you need to have a language test? Do you need to speak to somebody who speaks your language? Do you have health concerns? All of these things. And we work with many different organizations in the city of Edmonton to help make the referral standardized and to make sure that people are being referred to the organization that will address their needs. For example, if you are a refugee claimant in the city of Edmonton, you do not come to Catholic Social Services. You will go to the Edmonton Immigrant Service Association because they have the contract to work with those people who are refugee claimants or asylum seekers, who are very, very challenging to work with because they don't have access to very much at all, except for they get a work permit, and that's it, right? So, and then once we establish, what are the needs that they have, they're booked for services, they're booked to have their language test, they're referred to our counselors, they're referred to other organizations to be able to get what it is that they need. For those that come as government-assisted refugees, there is a very intensive program of resettlement that we have going on right here in the city of Edmonton. Most people don't know it, actually, but we've taken out massive hotels in this city. For example, during the Afghan response that began in 2001, we resettled about 2,000 people in the city of Edmonton, and we took out 3 hotels. And we housed them in hotels with government funding for as much time as it took to be able to get their language tested, to be able to get them housed, to be able to address all their needs, get their kids registered in school, and do all those things. And so we get a notice of arrival from the Government of Canada, the IRCC. In fact, on this very day, there is a flight of 360 individuals who came to Edmonton from Uganda today. And so Farah and I are the only people who are not at the airport today because we're here with you guys, right? But so they're picked up at the airport, they're taken to a hotel or our reception house facility. We have 2 reception house facilities in the city of Edmonton. They are like apartment buildings that nobody knows where they are. Nobody knows. It doesn't say Refugee Settlement Center. It just says nothing, actually. And we house them there for a maximum of 21 days, in which time the settlement counselor, who is somebody who speaks the language, will go in, meet the family, figure out what they need, try to find them housing, and it goes on and on and on and on from there. It can go for years, right? My first job at Catholic Social Services was as settlement counselor, working for people from Latin America because I speak Spanish. And those people still come to find me today, and that was 20 years ago, right? So there's really this connection that happens through our service, right? So they're moved to permanent accommodations and supported for 1 year. After that 1 year of government allowance, then if they are going to school, they will then transfer to something called Alberta Works, which is kind of like student funding through the government of Alberta, and continue. So this is my favorite part. This is where we describe the stages of adaptation and integration into life in Canada. And the best part about this is that there's different levels of trauma that people experience in their home country, be they come as refugees or economic immigrants. But the story is kind of the same for everyone. And it goes like this. On the night before I was coming to Canada, I couldn't sleep because I thought I was going to paradise, where everyone gets a house and the streets are paved with gold and the government's going to take care of me. And the best part is I can bring my whole family to come and live here in Canada, and it's going to be awesome. I'm even going to learn how to play hockey, maybe, right? So they get on the plane, they come to Edmonton, and it's January 15th, and it's minus 30, and they're like, what is going on here? And they don't speak the language, and they don't know how to take the bus. And then their kids start going to school and wearing their pants down below their knees and things like that, and speaking kind of Canadian lingo, and the parents get super stressed, and then the kids come home and say, I want to take this girl on a date, or I'm going out with this boy, and they say, you will not have boyfriend! right? And such things can really tear apart the family, create isolation, create two different contexts in which kids are growing up in Canada and parents are resisting Canada, and that leads to friction in the family, and that's where we come in, right? Because we got to help make people understand, and that's why we have courses, for example, like Parenting in Two Cultures, right? To help people understand what is it like to be a parent in Canada and what does it look like, right? So then, oftentimes, they get to the bottom of this, and they're really, really sad, actually. All newcomers express the same feeling of, after about 3 months, sad, depressed. I want to go home, right? Things are better back home. And sometimes they are. Sometimes people do come back home, right? But then, over time, people learn the language. People understand the education that they're going to need to be successful in Canada. They watch their kids grow up in Canada and become successful and get a good education. At some point, they decide that they're going to be a Canadian citizen. Hooray! And so they get their Canadian passport. And then, for the first time, as they have their Canadian citizenship, they go home to their country of origin. And it's fantastic. And they got presents and teddy bears and money for everybody. And there's cake and everybody's dancing and everything. And they're like, wow, what's wrong? What's missing? And then they sneak outside and they look and they check the temperature in Edmonton. And it says, oh, minus 31. And they laugh and they look and they say, wow, how are the Oilers doing? I'm wondering. And what happens is the concept of home has shifted, right? So now, after they come home, right, from their first trip home as a Canadian citizen, that's when they are fully integrated, fully successful, because their sense of home has changed. Their sense of belonging has changed. And that's a big part of the work that we do. We help people to create a sense of belonging to this culture. We help people to understand that they're a part of this culture, that they will help this multicultural society to grow. So we have developed this wonderful Welcome to Edmonton guide, which you can find on our website, which is 167 pages of pure resource information for newcomers. It is written in plain English so that people who have an ESL level 3 or 4 can understand. And we have designed a myriad of orientation programs all across the city to help newcomers to learn about our culture, to learn the language, and most importantly, get those referrals that they like to Zebra. We've worked with you guys a lot, sadly, right? But it does, you've probably heard of some of our staff, for sure, and many, many different organizations that we've partnered with to try to get newcomers to the place that they need to be. So here's a couple of examples of the programs that we have. Here's our Welcome to Edmonton guide coordinator. She does a big outreach event every 3 times a year. We'll invite people to our office and we'll celebrate our guidebook and connect with the other settlement agencies in the city. Here's our Welcome to Edmonton orientation, which is a multilingual orientation session interpreted into however many languages we need. Currently, we're doing a program for about 60 people in 5 different languages. So the way we do that is we sit them at the table, and we have an interpreter at each table, and this is our coordinator, Jeffrey Page, who's a wonderful, fascinating presenter, and we get the police come in, and we teach them about the police, and the healthcare professionals come in, we teach them about healthcare, and Farah comes in, and we teach them about education, and all the different stuff that we have. This is our library-based program that happens in 7 libraries across the city. That's where I was all day today, teaching conversational English to newcomers, and it was awesome. And this is where all people can come and practice English for free, right? Visitor, temporary foreign worker, refugee claimant. This is the one program that we have for everybody. And this is our program that is called the Links for Success program, which is a professional mentorship program in which we give underemployed or unemployed foreign trained professionals in that economic class the chance to volunteer in the sector of their interest. And with that volunteer experience, which looks the same as work experience on a resume, ding, they get in and they get to be working in the field that they want. As I mentioned, we have our parenting workshops, and we work hybrid. We're totally comfortable hybrid, right? Our programs, we like the in-person connection, right? But we do a lot of hybrid work. That's the gift of COVID, right? Working from home, doing hybrid work. It's fascinating. It's wonderful. I look forward to the 4-day work week and all of it, right? We have citizenship prep classes that we do. We have an outdoor education program where we take newcomers on walks through the wonderful city, River Valley, and we also have a partnership with the Alpine Club of Canada. And so we take the refugees sometimes out into the mountains to hike up to these, you know, they have to be a little bit able-bodied, right, to be able to do this. But we have discovered that the beautiful nature that exists in Alberta, I did some research and I found out that people hadn't even been to the mountains and been living here for 10 years, right? It's like, what? Well, I've been to Calgary, I've been to Edmonton, okay, Fort McMurray, but what about the mountain? So we take them. Sometimes, like when we have the funding to do so and when we can line it up. So that's super interesting. It brings them hope. We have women's groups where women get together and they go camping together. And we have men's groups and men get together and they talk about what's happening. They talk about what's happening in the family. And it's super important, right? To get these immigrant men to talk. All of our clients that we serve, like they experience isolation, right? They don't have that big extended family anymore. They don't have those friends anymore. The community looks different. I say to the newcomers, they say, what do you think about Canadians? They say, oh, Canadians are so friendly and oh, they're so nice and polite. And I say, okay, but do you know your neighbor? And they all just look at me totally confused. They're like, no. Right, okay. What happens when you say hello to your neighbor and bring them food at the door? They go, oh, thanks. Okay, I'll just put that in the fridge. I have to go, right? We are an independent culture. We are not a group culture, right? Everything in Canada is about time. We are very private. And for the newcomer, this is completely disorienting. Completely disorienting. In Africa, when a child enters your home, which happens all day long, I did spend some time in Africa, you know, it's like you sit them down and give them something to eat. That's what you do. So kids come to your house in Edmonton, you're like, where are your parents? Right? Kid comes back the next day, your parents still aren't here. Kid comes back the third day, you're gonna call Children's Services. So how do we explain that to newcomers? There's a reason. Right? There are reasons, but they need to be carefully explained, and so this is how we do it. So I'm going to invite my colleague Farah to come and take us home with the session on LARC.
Thank you. Okay, can everyone hear me well? Yeah? Okay. I don't know if I can follow through with that amazing performance of Frank. I can try. So just like he said, my name is Farah. I work with LARC. And it stands for Language Assessment, Referral, and Counseling Center. Has anybody heard of us before? Yeah? Okay, a few people, that's good. So what we do is, just like from our name, you can kind of guess the services that we offer. In case if you haven't known this before, we are the only assessment center for the Canadian Language Benchmark Test here in Edmonton and surrounding areas. So if anybody needs to take the test, they have to come to us and register. And I'll mention a little bit about that. I'm aware of time, so maybe I'll rush through some things, but it's just like a general overview of who we are and what we do. Okay, so we do English tests, and usually people take English tests because they either want to learn English or maybe they are required to do that to do academic upgrading at college or university, or if they are interested in getting some work experience so they can find a job. So that would be employment programs or occupational programs that can help them prepare for a specific job. We do educational credential assessment, educational counseling, and information sessions. So we'll break these down and I'll just go over each one. For the English test, it's a standardized language assessment. So anybody across Canada will be taking the same assessment. So someone in Toronto will take the same test as someone in Edmonton. So that's pretty cool. We test people in the 4 language skills. So listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The test, well, I know it's the test, but it's more of like an assessment to know where your level is at, right? So you don't pass or fail. It's more of just becoming aware of where you're at and see what strengths that you have and maybe what areas that you would like to improve on. And it's also important, like what Frank mentioned, if somebody, let's say, is interested in finding a volunteer opportunity or maybe being a part of a training program, it's important for them to know their level because chances are they will be asked for that. So that's kind of one thing to know. I wonder if it's on the next slide. So like what we do is that it tests people from level 1 all the way to level 8. So if you get anywhere between level 1 to level 4, like CLB 1 to CLB 4, you have a basic level of English. So you can do like the everyday language, hello, talk about the weather. If you get anywhere between 5 and 8, it's more of that, like I guess, more academic level of English, and then you can do more of the reading and writing. Generally speaking, like Frank mentioned, 1 to 4 is just make friends, maybe start looking for jobs if that's what someone is interested in. 5 and up would be either for training opportunities, and then if you want to go to school, then you need the N, like an 8. So it's, the more, I guess, serious your goal is, the higher English level that you need. And sometimes it's frustrating for people, but I always like to remind people that it's just to make sure that you are able to keep yourself safe and others safe, because you need to understand, some things that have to do with safety or procedures or how things are done, especially when it comes to instructions, right? So you can't cheat your way through it, but sometimes people do. So we have different tests. I'm not gonna go over each one, but the general one is the CLB PT, which is Canadian Language Benchmark Placement Test. It's about an hour to 3 hours, depending on how long it takes. But you're just tested with a language assessor, and then after you're done, they will explain your test result for you, and then we'll give you 2 options for schools, whether it's a link school that is funded by the federal government, available for permanent residents. You can study there for free as long as you are a permanent resident. And then we have ESL, which is English as a second language. And this is more for those who want to learn English specifically to continue learning and go to college or university, or for those who have become Canadian citizens and they can't be in link classes anymore. That's kind of the overview. Obviously, the schools, we have so many options here in Edmonton that you can study online, in person, part-time, full-time, during the day, in the evening. So we take that into consideration. We also look into where people live. So maybe they prefer something close, or they don't care and they want the place that is, with the shortest wait list, if that ever exists. And a great option for those who are waiting is to check out our LACE program, right? Because you can go there at any time, feel like you're doing something with your time, because right now people are waiting for like 5, maybe 8 months, which is really sad, but it's a situation. So yeah, I kind of mentioned a little bit about this. For the listening and speaking, it will be one-on-one, unless if somebody's using the computer, and it will be up to 30 minutes. And then for the reading and writing, it will be just on paper, and then it will be about 30 minutes. So it could be like an hour and a half, depending on how fast someone can be. Sometimes people ask who accepts our test. I kind of touched on that. Just to quickly mention that universities don't accept our tests if, let's say, someone wants to use it as proof for their English language proficiency. So that's something to keep in mind. But if they want to take ESL classes, then that could be used as proof for that. For those who attend link classes, if they reach level 4, they'll be able to use a certificate from the link school and use that as proof of their English language proficiency for their Canadian citizenship. So that's like something that people can use. And like I said, just different programs. We always recommend that people check with the school that they're interested in, or the training program that they would like to enroll in, and ask if they accept our tests before they take it. But at the end of the day, our test is free, so that's okay too. But it's just to make sure that we're being as proficient as possible. Our test is valid dependent on what you need it for. If you need it for ESL schools or classes, employment readiness, or occupational training programs, it's valid for a year. But if you need it for link classes, it's valid for 2 years. And sometimes people contact us and they want to do a retest. And unfortunately, we won't be able to do that, especially if people haven't been training. And the idea is to give people some room to improve on their language level and practice before we test them again, right? Because it will be the same thing. It won't matter. So that's something to keep in mind. Sometimes we're able to do a retest under special or unique circumstances. So we still encourage people to connect with us, and then we'll connect them with one of our team leads who will be able to help them from there. Okay, how can people book the test with us? First, they have to register with us. If they live in Edmonton, they must come in person. If they live outside of Edmonton, then they call us at this phone number, 780-424-3545. And then once they register, just like Frank said, we'll sit them with one of our LERC referral intake workers, and then they will book them a test. Usually speaking, we book about 2 weeks in advance. Sometimes if we're super busy, it will be longer, but right now we're having a really good wait time in comparison to other times that we've had in the past. And we ask people to bring in their photo ID, so like a PR card would be great. If they're registered, if they need to register. Now, if I wonder if it's on this slide, but if let's say somebody is a return client and they have already registered, then they can either call us, email us, or fill out the client return form. I would say it's better to either email or fill out the form, because then you don't have to wait. If you come in person, it's first come, first serve, so then you have to wait. This could have taken you like, I don't know, 5 minutes instead of just coming all the way here, especially during winter time. Sometimes people ask what kind of accommodation we're able to provide. It depends on what the client needs. So we always, again, we're big on communication, so we always recommend that people connect with us and communicate with us, while they're booking the test, what type of services or supports that they would like to receive. These are some examples. So for online testing, again, it's only for people who are outside of Edmonton. But let's say somebody lives with mobility challenges, then we can make that exception for them. If maybe some clients need extra time because they have a learning disability, or if, let's say, other examples for those who need maybe magnifying glass, large print testing, or anything else. So we will go above and beyond to help people, but we just need to be prepared. For the educational credential assessment, this I guess would be like another thing that we do. So all of that was about testing. This one is about educational credential assessment. It's in partnership with WES, which stands for World Education Services. They've introduced a new program called it WES Gateway, which is a little bit confusing. And this is to help people who have education from specific countries who can't get the original document, right? Because usually if you want to know what your education means in your home country, or like what it equals to here in Canada, you have to have your high school or your university send those documents directly to the, credential assessment agency. Sometimes people don't have that luxury, right? So this is why this program was introduced. And I just want to clarify that your education has to be from these countries. You don't have to have citizenship from those countries. So that's also good. These countries are Afghanistan, Eritrea, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Ukraine, and Venezuela. For Ukrainians, it's a little bit different because they are able to get the original document of their education. So their process is different than other people from these who have education from these countries. And for those who have education from Afghanistan, there's only a list of, like, I believe 30 universities so far. So if the country is not on that list, we won't be able to help them, but we can do high school, right? And we don't require the actual original document. People can have a photocopy, and it could be the transcript, diploma, degree, anything that they have with them. So we'll just book the appointment with them. If people need financial assistance, we can help them with that. We'll cover the cost of the application. Then we have information sessions, and these are the topics that we cover. So those are things that we do every month or every other month, but we also invite people from the community to highlight the work that they do, or services or programs that could benefit our clients. So this is really exciting. Some of the stuff that we do, like Frank mentioned, study options in Edmonton, ESL academic upgrading, and student finance in Edmonton, finding a job. We don't do employment services, but this is something that's related to training, and then other topics. But if somebody here is interested in requesting a presentation, please connect with us, and then we can cover any of those things. If there's something specific, maybe relating to what we do, or maybe even about WES Gateway, we could still prepare something for you and then do the presentation. Okay, and then I think this is the last thing I was going to mention for today. We have something that we call School Directory. It's on our website. So if you go to lark.cssalberta.ca, you'll be able to find it at the top right, or you can go directly to this link. And this is a great resource for you if you want to know information about training programs or maybe volunteer opportunities or even like classes that can help you, so you can look it up. If, let's say, you did that and you were not able to customize it the way that you want, you need more support, then we can help you. And then we can book an educational counseling session. Yeah, because I think I can go back, hold on. Let me just go back all the way here. So for the educational counseling session, it's one-on-one free service again. We can do it online or in person. And this is a great opportunity, especially for newcomers to Edmonton, to ask questions about a specific job. So maybe you want to become an engineer. You can ask us, do you have to be licensed or not? What is the licensing process? Are there any training courses or programs that you can take? So we give you the information that we have, and then we also are able to give you the referral to that, let's say maybe APEGA, which is the college for engineers that give them license and to connect with them and talk to them. We also invite them to do presentations as well. But I really kind of like this because exactly what Frank said, sometimes it's out there, but if you don't see it, if you're not aware of it, how are you going to know? And that's where we come in. We like to connect people to these opportunities, or at least this piece of information that can be life-changing, because it can save them 5 years, it can save them money, it could also save them when it comes to their mental health, because it can be really overwhelming and scary. And I really find it admirable to see people who don't give up. And okay, no, yes, it's hard, but I'm going to do it either way, right? Because sometimes people keep telling you it's difficult, and then you give up on yourself, right? And if, let's say, being a doctor is your passion, right? I don't know, good luck to you if you want to do that all over again, but you can still do it, right? It's not impossible. It's just going to be different. And like Frank mentioned, something that I find really interesting is that people don't realize their superpowers, right? Because you have a superpower from your home country, the life that you've lived, who you are, your perception, and that can actually make you better at your job or your connections. But sometimes because you keep getting rejected, or maybe you find it difficult to integrate, or maybe you're not so confident with your language skills, you start to look at oh, I'm not enough, or whatever. So that's kind of something that I like about the educational counseling, or even the assessment. It gives people hope, or maybe that spark that they need to feel oh, you know what, maybe it's not too dark, maybe there is a light and I can figure it out. All right, does anybody have any questions for Frank or I?